Welcome everyone to Stories Behind the Music. Today we are discussing the album Beatles for Sale for the Beatles. 1964 was a year full of paradoxes. It witnessed their unparalleled global triumph, but also brought about immense physical and psychological exhaustion. As the Beatles' fourth studio album, released in less than 2 years, Beatles for Sale is the direct auditory and visual product of this contradictory period. The album is often mistakenly dismissed as a creative stagnation, but a deep analysis reveals that it was, in fact, a crucial and courageous turning point. It was on this album that the band shed the flamboyant mask of modern lads, displaying a more complex and vulnerable artistic persona. This video will fully analyze the creative background of Beatles for Sale, its pioneering production process, its core themes and emotional core, its iconic album cover, and the profound legacy it left behind. Let's state the conclusion first. The shortcomings often criticized in this album are precisely the elements that made it a key milestone in popular music history. The story of Beatles for Sale begins with the band's brutal touring schedule. This year, the Beatles toured extensively. From June to August, they embarked on a world tour, traversing the globe, Denmark, Hong Kong, Australia, with 2 shows a day being the norm. Immediately following this, in August and September, they conducted a 31-day, 32 show tour covering 24 cities across the US and Canada. This relentless pace brought immense pressure. It was quite literally hell mode. The audience's frantic screaming, the surrounding crowd's heightened security measures, and even death threats became part of their daily routine. The band's road manager, Neil Aspinall, perfectly captured this unsustainable rhythm. No band today would finish a long American tour and immediately go into the studio at the end of September, write songs while starting a new album, and complete it in 5 weeks while simultaneously touring the UK, just to get it out before Christmas. This enormous pressure left its mark on the band members. Producer George Martin recalled that during the making of Beatles for Sale, the band members were pretty tired, looking like battle-weary veterans. The album's subdued and melancholy tone is a direct reflection of this emotional state. Tell me, wouldn't this intensity drive anyone crazy? Couldn't the pressure be any bigger? Look at this packed schedule. The 19th of August to the 20th of September, spanning the US and Canada, New York City, followed by Chicago, Detroit and Toronto for 3 consecutive days. This wasn't a tour, it was a war. You might think they were on vacation, but the band was forced to release this album. Any other band with this intensity would probably have had a mental breakdown. The release of a new album was a commercial necessity, as the record company wanted new material out before Christmas. John Lennon in particular felt the stress of fame, and his lyrics captured this sentiment. The Beatles' meeting with Bob Dylan in New York in August 1964 became a significant turning point, encouraging Lennon to explore more introspective and confessional songwriting. It was the band's endless touring schedule and immense psychological toll that directly led to the change in the album's content. Research shows that their fatigued mental state was not a depletion of creative inspiration, but rather a source of new material. This mental state directly fueled the melancholic and introspective thematic shift within the album. Therefore, the time constraints on production were closely linked to the band's emotional state, collectively shaping the album's artistic direction. They simply didn't have enough time to write 14 brand new original songs. Consequently, the album includes a significant number of cover tracks, which was not an artistic regression but a logical response to the pressure of reality. The recording of the album took place at EMI Studios in London, later known as Abbey Road Studios, primarily concentrated over 3 weeks from late September to late October. Despite the tight schedule, the band's relationship with the studio continued to evolve. George Harrison recalled that they had become more relaxed with ourselves and more at ease in the studio. Music writer Andrusat Millard accurately summarized their change in attitude by describing the studio from the Beatles' perspective as shifting from a formal workplace to a workshop and laboratory. Even with the rush, the Beatles still experimented boldly during the recording of this album, leaving behind several milestones in pop music production. 8 days a week, pioneering the use of the fade-in effect, which was extremely rare in pop songs at the time. I Feel Fine, deliberately incorporating guitar feedback into a pop song, one of the earliest instances. Though this single was not included in the UK album, it was recorded during the same period. Expansion of instrumentation. The band added new instruments to their basic sound to complement Lennon's more profound lyrics. This was particularly evident in percussion, with Ringo Starr using timpani, and Every Little Thing bongos and a chocolho, among others. Harrison also made his first use of a new Gretsch Tennessine guitar. With 8 originals and 6 covers, the 8 original tracks on this album signal a profound shift in the band's tone. No Reply, the album's opener. It is heavy in tone, depicting a desperate, paranoid John Lennon trying to get his girlfriend back. Publisher Dick James commented that this was the first time Lennon told a complete story in a song. I Am a Loser, this confessional folk rock song is widely regarded as a key turning point influenced by Bob Dylan. It introduced new themes of self-doubt and vulnerability into Lennon's songwriting. I'll Follow the Sunday, this beautiful early McCartney composition displays a bittersweet melancholy, contrasting with his previous cheerful songs. Ringo's arrangement using hand claps on his knees as percussion is exquisitely subtle. 8 Days a Week, the most commercially oriented track on the album, Lennon himself once admitted it was a filler. However, its transition from bridge to chorus is filled with joy, and its pioneering fade, in effect, is a highlight. The album's 6 cover tracks were included due to the lack of new original material, but they were by no means careless additions. These songs were a tribute to the band's early live performances, offering brilliant insight into their German stage performances. Rock and roll music, Lennon's raucous rendition, and brilliant vocals of this Chuck Berry song are a highlight, even though its upbeat style is somewhat at odds with the album's introspective tone. Words of Love, this cover of Buddy Holly, is a stunningly tight harmony performance that sounds like a quiet gospel hymn, showing a more thoughtful approach to cover songs than on earlier albums. Honey Don't, this track, sung by Ringo Starr, is full of joy. While the album's cover tracks are considered off the cuff, they demonstrate the band's continued progress in vocal and instrumental technique. Here is the key point. Listen up. While physically and emotionally exhausted, the band demonstrated unprecedented creativity in the studio, experimenting with new sounds and techniques. This seemingly contradictory phenomenon actually reveals that their creativity had shifted from a skill-based model to an artistry-based model. Fatigue forced them to break through the formulaic, cheerful pop framework of the past. Pressure and introspection guided them into a more genuine, expressive state of creation. The recording studio was no longer merely a workshop for producing hit singles, but became a laboratory where they transformed their emotional state into entirely new sonic forms. The melancholic lyrics and the new sonic palette were not independent, but two sides of the same coin, jointly foreshadowing a new maturity that would define their later work. Next, let's focus on a few of the more famous songs on the album. First is 8 Days a Week. The main creator was Paul McCartney, and the inspiration came from a casual remark by a driver. I ain't got nothing but love, babe, 8 days a week. Paul was riding in his private chauffeur's car to Lennon's house in Weybridge one day in October 1964. The driver complained, I've been awfully busy this week. I've been working 8 days a week. A British idiom, an exaggeration for exhausted. Paul instantly captured this surreal romantic metaphor. 7 days a week isn't enough to love you. So I'll love you 8 days a week, Lennon later commented. The song is 90% Paul's. I just helped polish the middle 8 bridge. It's a sweet love song. Love overload, using the absurd 8 days to express the infinity of love. Ooh, I need your love, babe. Guess you know. It's true, hope you need my love, babe, just like I need you. This was a youthful confession, the first time the Beatles admitted. We also need to be loved, no longer just untouchable idols. This song featured 2 global firsts in recording technology. 1, fade. In intro, traditional pop songs had cold starts, direct drum beat spot guitars. George Martin had a sudden idea. Let the entire song gradually emerge from silence. 0 o'clock, 008, volume from 0% to 100%. This was achieved manually on the mixing console faders, the first time in global popular music history. 2, Lennon plus double Paul layered harmony. Track 1, Lennon's rhythm guitar. Track 2, Paul's lead vocal, double tracked with ATT, automatic double tracking. Track 3, Harrison's solo guitar, recorded at double speed and then slowed down, track 4/3, part harmony by Lennon plus Paul plus Harrison on the high note of the chorus. 8 days a week, the AT technology was invented by Abbey Road engineer Ken Townsend, specifically for the Beatles, and later became an industry standard. The difficulty in live performance: it was impossible to reproduce the fade in and the double speed guitar. So the Beatles skipped the first 8 seconds and cut straight into the drum beat during their 1965 tour. Fun fact, Lennon hated this song, saying in a 1968 Rolling Street 1 interview, "It's too sweet, like it was written for little girls," but he would still deliberately sing the wrong lyrics during live performances to amuse the audience. Paul's original manuscript was auctioned in 2019, selling for £187,000. Movie Easter egg: in the ending of the 2016 documentary, Paul plays a solo version of this song in a Mexican stadium with 80,000 people singing the chorus. A perfect tear, jerk moment. 8 Days a Week was not only the Beatles' first US #1 single, but also a watershed moment in their transition from a live band to a studio artist. A driver's complaint turned into an eternal love song, with 2 recording revolutions that influenced half a century. That is the Beatles' magic. I'm a Loser is John Lennon's inaugural work of confessional rock. The Beatles took off their masks for the first time. The inspiration came from Bob Dylan on the 28th of August, 1964, in a New York hotel room. The Beatles met Bob Dylan for the first time. John was struck by Dylan's lyrics. He wasn't writing about Moon, June. He was writing about the real inside. 48 hours later, Lennon wrote, "I'm a Loser," a first in the Beatles' career. The lyrics were no longer the love formula, boy meets girl. It directly admitted, "I am a loser." Lennon said in a 1966 Rolling Street 1 interview, "That was the first time I began to tear myself open to the public." The lyrics sing, "Is it for her or myself that I cry? I am a loser, and I've lost someone who's near to me. I am a loser, and I am not what I appear to be, although I laugh and I act like a clown. Beneath this mask I am wearing a frown. My tears are falling like rain from the sky. Is it for her or myself that I cry?" The line "lost someone who's near to me" refers to the trauma of Lennon's mother, Julia, who died in a car accident in 1958, and Lennon's childhood of being raised by his aunt. The lyrics "mask" and "clown" allude to the Beatles' public image as cute boys and Lennon's internal struggle with depression. Lennon later admitted, "This song is about me, not some girl." The harmonica solo in the song is a tribute to the harmonica sound in Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind. This song was extremely difficult to perform live, with Lennon having to handle the harmonica guitar and lead vocals all by himself. Lennon often played the harmonica wrong during the 1964 Cotton and Eat 66 tours. In the 1965 Ed Sullivan Show live performance, the harmonica was completely out of tune, but the fans' screams drowned out everything. The Beatles first challenged their idol Aura by using the phrase, "I am a loser." Dylan, upon hearing it, commented, "They're finally starting to write about themselves." Lennon referred to "I'm a Loser" as the prototype for Help. During the Revolver era, Lennon completely tore off the mask in the Plastic Ono Band album, with songs like Mother and God representing this. Lennon's loser obsession was deep. When asked in a 1964 interview, "Do you consider yourself successful?" Lennon replied, "No, I am a loser." The journalist thought Lennon was joking. In the lyric manuscript, Lennon doodled a crying little person on the notebook page. It sold at auction in 2017 for £125,000. Movie Easter egg: in the 2019 film Yesterday, the protagonist sings this song in an empty stadium, symbolizing the world losing the Beatles. The fissure in the Beatles starts here. "I'm a Loser" is not a love song. It's a confession letter written to himself. It ripped off the sugar coating of the cute Beatle. It foreshadowed the psychological depth of Help, Norwegian Wood, and Nowhere Man. It transformed John Lennon from an idol into a human. Lennon recalled in 1970, "Without I'm a Loser, there would have been no Mother later." That was the first time I told myself the truth. No Reply is the opening chapter of the Beatles' Jealousy trilogy. Despair on the other end of John Lennon's unanswered phone call. Music and lyrics by Lennon-McCartney, with 95% created by John Lennon. Key elements of the song: a dramatic drum, intro, phone imagery, and a jealousy narrative. First, let's look at the creative background. This is Lennon's Peeping Tom song, inspired by a real event in 1963. After a fight with his wife Cynthia, Lennon ran away to his aunt's house. Late at night he regretted it and called home, but there was no reply. He rushed home on his bike, only to see the silhouette of a man through the window, who was actually a friend consoling Cynthia. In a state of jealousy, self-contempt and anger, Lennon instantly wrote no reply. Lennon said in a 1966 Rolling Street 1 interview, "I was a peeping Tom at the time, spying on my wife from outside the window." This song isn't romantic, it's pathological possessiveness. No reply is the starting point, the progression from suspicion to violence. Lennon's dark side gradually escalated. The lyrics sing, "This happened once before, when I came to your door, no reply. They said it wasn't you, but I saw you peep through your window. I saw the light." The line "this happened once before" refers to Lennon's repeated childhood trauma of being ignored. His mother Julia abandoned him. Paul contributed the middle section. "If I were you, I'd realize." Attempting rational persuasion, Lennon found it too soft, but kept it. The opening drum beat, a rim shot played by Ringo, is the world's first cold start drum beat. The volume goes from 0 to 100, mimicking the sudden ringing of a telephone. In live performances, because the opening drum beat was too abrupt, it was omitted during the 1964 Got Nina Teen 66 tours. Lennon often forgot the lyrics during live singing, getting away with using La 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 instead. The song's status in music history, it pioneered the jealousy narrative, influencing songs like The Smiths' Girlfriend in a Coma and Arctic Monkeys' Do I Want to Know. Lennon's phone fear, when asked in a 1964 interview, "What do you fear most?" Lennon replied, "An unanswered phone call." Lyric manuscript, Lennon drew a figure behind a window in his notebook in 1964. It sold at auction in 2018 for £150,000. Movie Easter egg: in the 2019 film Yesterday, the protagonist sings this song in a phone booth with no one answering. The dark side of the Beatles begins here. No Reply is not a love song. It is an unanswered phone call that opened the psychological metamorphosis of Lennon from cute boy to pathological lover, and finally escalating to a violent threatener. It stripped away the sugarcoating of the cute Beatle. It foreshadowed the psychological depth of Norwegian Wood and Jealous Guy. It turned John Lennon from an idol into a peeping Tom. Lennon recalled in 1970. No Reply was the first time I admitted I was pathological. Without it, there would have been no Jealous Guy later. Paul never participated in the lead vocals. It was all sung solo by Lennon, highlighting his personal emotion. Well, actually, his personal jealousy. Rock and roll music. The Beatles' Rock and Roll Roots declaration in tribute to Chuck Berry. Just let me hear some of that. This song can be considered the rock and roll Bible. It reached number 8 on the Billboard R&B chart and number 6 on the pop chart. The core message of the lyrics is, just let me hear some of that rock and roll music. I don't care about modern jazz, conga, mambo, tango. The Beatles' cover of this song was a pilgrimage to rock and roll, Lennon said. Without Chuck Berry, there would have been no Beatles. Paul recalled, "We sang this every night in Hamburg until our throats bled." The Beatles version verse, the original. The Beatles version is wilder. Lennon deliberately tore up his voice, imitating Little Richard. The Beatles modified the song, deleting the original's lengthy dance list, conga, mambo, etc. But they added a criticism of modern jazz. The recording engineer recalled that Lennon's voice was already hoarse from recording. "I'm a loser" the day before. He deliberately didn't drink water and coughed up blood after the recording. George Martin, he sang like he'd been run over by a truck. He lost his voice for 3 days after the recording and cancelled interviews. It was a mandatory song on the 1964 Hot 1966 tours. Lennon would sing and do the Chuck Berry duck walk while fans screamed. Chuck Berry, after hearing the Beatles version in 1965, said, "They sang it crazier than I did. I love it." This song is the Beatles' Rock and Roll Roots declaration. Rock and roll music is not just a cover. It is the Beatles' rock and roll baptism. They used screaming piano and 12-string guitar to turn a 1957 R&B classic into a 1964 youth nuclear bomb, Lennon recalled in 1970. That was the closest we came to the Hamburg Cavern Club days. Without this song, there would have been no Helter Skelter later. I'll Follow the Sunday, Paul's letter to his future self at age 16. The Beatles' most tender farewell poem. In 1959, in the living room of 24th Inn Road, Liverpool, Paul was 16 and had just lost his mother, Mary. The lyrics sing, "One day, I'll leave this place and follow the sun." The Beatles, fatigued by touring, needed a quiet song. Paul pulled it out of an old notebook and recorded it quickly. Lennon only added one line of harmony, "Tomorrow May Rain," Lennon recalled in 1968. When Paul played it for me, I said, "It's too soft," but he insisted on keeping it. "Someday you'll know I was the one, but tomorrow may rain, so I'll follow the sun." The line, "One day you'll look to see I've gone," is Paul's running away fantasy after his mother's death, an escape from grief. "Tomorrow May Rain" was added by Lennon, symbolizing uncertainty. "I'll Follow the Sun" is the Californian dream, as the Beatles had just conquered America in 1964. Paul stated in 2018, "This isn't a love song. It's a memo to myself. One day, I'm going to leave Liverpool." During the recording, there were no drums, no bass, no electric guitar. It was the Beatles' simplest recording globally. Ringo slapped his thigh with his hand, and George sat on the floor, tapping a wooden box with his knee, mimicking a heartbeat. Recording engineer Ken Townsend said, "This was the quietest Beatles recording. It was never performed during the 1964 Botanitin 66 tours. Paul performed it live for the first time in 2018, Carpool Karaoke. Cultural impact and status as a farewell poem. This is the Beatles' oldest original song, written in 1959. The anthology documentary used this song as the closing theme for the Early Years segment. Paul sang it in his old Liverpool home living room in 2018, bringing tears worldwide. Status in music history, the Beatles' childhood archive, foreshadowing the acoustic minimalist style of Blackbird and Mother Nature's Son. Paul's childhood manuscript, a 1959 notebook with a sun drawn on it, it sold at auction in 2020 for £129,000. Lennon's disdain, he said during the 1964 recording, "It's too sissy," but he admitted in an anthology interview, "It's Paul's most innocent song." Movie Easter egg in the 2019 film Yesterday. The protagonist sings this song on the roof of his old Liverpool house, symbolizing finding himself again. "I'll Follow the Sunday" is not a love song. It's the Sunday. Chase's declaration of a 16-year-old Paul, a postcard written to the future. 16-year-old Paul with nylon strings and the sound of his knees sang that. "Leaving is braver than staying." The Beatles of 1964 used it to say goodbye to their youth. Paul said after his 2018 performance, "I finally followed the sun. It's in every one of your hearts. Tomorrow may rain, so I'll follow the sun." Next, let's talk about the album cover, which is a visual confession. The album cover was photographed by the famous photographer Robert Freeman, who also shot the covers for With the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, Help, and Rubber Soul. This photograph was taken on an autumn day in Hyde Park, London, forming a stark contrast to their previous sunny, energetic image. See, the style has changed. What does this indicate? It indicates that the band's state has changed. Look at these faces. A visual presentation of exhaustion. The Beatles members in the photo look tired and completely devoid of smiles. Lennon is hunched over, Harrison's gaze is somewhat empty, and the overall indifference conveyed by the band communicates a deep sense of fatigue. The whole band looks deflated, with not a single smile. This was their true state at the time. This cover was not just casually taken, it is part of the album's emotion and an indispensable part of the album's narrative. This cover is more than just a photo. It's a declaration. Before listeners hear any song, it has already visually communicated the album's low mood, telling you that the album's tone is not upbeat. This thematic unity between visual art and musical content is itself an artistic declaration, breaking the standard mold of pop music at the time. The title is Beatles for Sale. Doesn't the listless expression make it a bit ironic? It can be interpreted as a subtle commentary on their commodification. Freeman was known for his ability to capture the band's personal charm and emotion. What he presented through the album cover was not merely a passive reflection of the band's emotional state. The deeper meaning is that this was a bold artistic choice. The cover served a meta-narrative function, issuing a visual confession to the world. The Beatles were exhausted. By displaying themselves without their iconic smiles and carefully crafted images, They signaled a shift transforming from a brand of endless vitality into ordinary people with complex emotions. This visual honesty was a crucial step in their growth from a commercial phenomenon to respected artists. Beatles for Sale achieved huge commercial success in the UK, holding the #1 spot for 11 of its 46 weeks in the charts and becoming the best-selling album of 1964. But the situation was different in the US. Americans didn't receive the complete album. It was fragmented, with only 8 songs appearing on Beatles' 65, which also became the fastest-selling album in the US that year. The remaining songs were released on Beatles VI in 1965. Do you think it's possible to grasp the album's overall intention that way? It's impossible to experience it fully. This is the problem. Commercial interests prevailed, destroying the artistic integrity. This table details the track differences between the UK and US versions, visually demonstrating how the album's US release was fragmented. The songs on the left are from the UK version, and their positions on the right are on the US version, C. Songs like Kansas City, Words of Love, What You Are Doing, and Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby are nowhere to be found on the US version. With so much key content missing, can you expect American audiences to understand the album's complete meaning? Isn't that foolish? This is a typical commercial operation, destroying artistic value. Many people, including some so-called experts, believe this album is mediocre, calling it stagnant, or even their weakest studio work. What's the reason? This view stems from the inclusion of cover tracks, which is utterly ridiculous. This assessment is fundamentally wrong. Beatles for Sale is a critical transitional album, a bridge from their early, cheerful style to the more mature and profound works of Help, and Rubber Soul later on. The self-doubting lyrics shown in songs like I Am a Loser and No Reply laid the groundwork for later masterpieces like Eleanor Rigby and I Am So Tired. And those recording experiments, from the fade in effect to the use of new instruments, aren't they all preludes to the sonic revolution of Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? Therefore, the UK version of Beatles for Sale is a unified album with a clear narrative arc, from fatigued originals to rock covers with clear logic. However, the US version, Beatles 65, tore it apart. Key covers that established their rock roots, as well as several important original works, were removed. This fragmented release made it impossible for people in the US to grasp the true value and artistic integrity of the album. Due to the lack of access to the album's complete, thematically linked content, this greatly affected the album's reputation among us audiences, leading it to be underestimated. It is this fragmented nature of the product that undermined the artistic integrity the UK album sought to establish through its thematically linked songs. And in summary, Beatles for Sale is a masterpiece precisely because it was born out of that exhausted environment. It courageously acknowledged the psychological toll of fame. This album marks their transition from a group of boys who only knew how to be cheerful into a band capable of profound introspection. It is the bridge connecting the past and the future. Without this album, there would have been no Help. Revolver, or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Do you understand? That is its historical status.